Hi everyone, let's take a look at a legal research query when we start at the beginning and we need to look up a topic. So we're going to be in Lexis Plus and go to legal research and you'll be asked what would you like to research today? And I'm going to type in a search. So I'm going to run my search on negligent infliction of emotional distress. And I'm going to add some extra terms to make it a little more specific to my scenario, bystander or third party. So this is when, let's just say a sibling watches their other sibling get hit by a car. And obviously the sibling hit by the car can file a lawsuit against the driver of the car. But if the person watching who saw it all happen has now emotional distress, then they can also try to file for negligent infliction of emotional distress because they were the bystander or the third party to this lawsuit between the accident victim and the driver. Okay, so let's run this search. I just threw my terms in and we're going to start the research process. So step one is to go to secondary materials. Now I know this is what the librarians teach you to go to secondary materials first to get a really good background information on the law. But I'm going to take you to a little half step first, practical guidance. Now this practical guidance section actually has a little section of its own for practice notes. Practice notes are written by attorneys for attorneys, and they tend to be a lot less dense than secondary materials. So for students or for attorneys practicing, it's going to give them kind of the rundown of what they need, but not the nitty-gritty details. For those, you'll probably have to look in secondary materials and go to a treatise, which we're going to do next. But now let's just see what comes up under practice notes. Also, keep in mind, you will always have the availability to narrow to a jurisdiction. Now, I tried to narrow here, but there's no California materials for me to narrow to, so I'm going to leave it as is, and we can check out what's here. This is emotional injury. State law surveys are kind of cool because then you're getting all the states and it'll lead you right to the law for that state. And so we're kind of getting the big picture of the whole United States, then we zero in. So we could come here. Now, when it comes to this step before going to secondary materials, I really do encourage you not to spend a lot of time here. You either find what you need in practice notes and you move on. So let's just give practice notes here 5 minutes of our time. Not really, we're going to zip through the next section, but in reality, I want you to give it 5 minutes of your own time. And if you're not finding what you need, we're going to go straight to secondary. Okay, so here we are, product liability. Ugh, no, see, we're already not in the best plot. Okay, so what we have here is emotional injury as bodily injury. Okay, great. So let's check out this 50 state survey and see if it's helpful. Now, obviously, we only care about California, so you can see here's the survey, and here are my cases that I might want to check out for bodily injury in California. So right here, this is the only section that I need to read to see if this practice note is helpful to me. And you can see that it's already linking me to some cases if I want to check out those cases. Again, keep in mind that this is all on bodily injury, emotional injury caused by an accident. It doesn't look like any bystander terms are here. They would be highlighted. So we're just going to skip this, and none of the other materials here were helpful. So we'll go back to our original search results. Here's secondary materials. These can be dense, and we have almost 4,000 of them, right? So we need to narrow right away. So I'm going to tell you the best tip is to narrow by content type. So here are treatises and guides. That's where I'm going to tell you to go first. It's where the librarians tell you to go. You really want to go to those treatises first before looking at anything else. Now, if you want to, you can also add in some jurisprudence, but that will give us 1,500 sites. That's a lot to look at right now, so I might want to come back later and check to see if anything else is coming up in jurisprudence and just keep them separate so it's a little less on my screen. But next, I'm going to narrow to the filter jurisdiction. So when I come down, I can take a look at the U.S. federal resources, and I also have the option to narrow to California. Now, for those of you that have an issue where it's California, but you can also talk about the federal courts and you're in federal courts in California, that's okay, because we're still going to pull materials from California, whether it be state materials or federal. So it's okay to click California. You're going to get both. And of course, if you want to, you could also click U.S. federal. All right, so let's see what we're getting here. Occasionally, I may come down a little bit more and open up my filter for sources. to see if anything here looks extra good. Here I am, I've got California torts. I've heard of Witkin before. That looks helpful. So let's say I click those two. Okay, emotional distress caused by witnessing injury to another. Wow. Emotional distress of bystanders. That looks amazing, right? So let's go into that one. Okay, so now I'm in my secondary source, and there's a couple things I want to do. The first is you'll see Lexis is popping open my table of contents right here because they know that there's a lot on this page, right? And so now I really want to open this plus sign because I'm where I want to be, but I only want to read about the section that I need. This is what you're looking for when you're in a secondary source. We need to know what the elements are, okay? So here it's talking about the former requirements and some other things. Now, if this is my first time learning about bystander liability, I may just want to take the time and read this whole screen to get an idea of what's going on. It looks like for the present test to see if bystanders can recover, I might want this thing be lechuza and to come down from here because this, we're not using that anymore. Now we want to come down and use the new one, okay? And so I see about it generally. Let's take a look at it generally. So now I'm looking for the elements that I need to prove based on thing v lechuza. What is the test? Okay, and it's right here. It's actually numbered. The plaintiff may recover damages of emotional distress by observing the negligently inflicted injury of a third person only if 1, it's that person is closely related to the victim, 2, that person was present when the accident occurred, and 3, they suffered emotional distress. Okay, so let's say 2 and 3 we easily hit, right? I mean, they were there. They've had stomach problems ever since the accident. They can't sleep at night. So now we really just want to know, is that sibling closely related enough to the victim? So now I need to look into the close relationship requirement. And I'm going to bounce down and I'm going to read more about that section, right? Because that's my real issue. I want that spectrum of cases that says, on one hand, you're going to have people like this that are not closely related to the victim. And on the other hand, you're going to have people like this, the courts are finding closely related to the victim. So we want that spectrum of case law that outlines who those peoples are and under what circumstances the court is finding them close enough. So for each of these little footnotes, you know, you can bounce down and read the cases where these are coming from. So once we kind of have an idea of what the case law is, and we're starting to get kind of understand the element, do we need this closely related test? Now I'm going to come back up and we're going to move on to the next step of the research process, okay? I'll be honest and tell you that a really good researcher tends to pull about 2 to 3 secondary sources before they feel comfortable moving on to the next step. So I'm going to run that search again. And that next step is usually to go to statutes and legislation. So if there's a statute on point, we're going to need to go to it now. And for many of you who have a statute on point to your research, this is a necessary step that you must do. Okay, here I am. And the first one looks really good, right? But it's in New Mexico. So always make sure when you're in statutes that you narrow to 2 things. You narrow to content type, codes, and you narrow to the jurisdiction, California. So now when we stop at the top, we're looking at assault, battery, wrongful death. That's not it. Responsibility for negligence. Okay, so this is negligence statute. And it is true that the negligence statute is attenuated from the issue of negligent infliction of emotional distress, but it really is the best statute in California that outlines the law on negligence, including negligent infliction of emotional distress. So we're going to go to this one. But to be fair, it is only loosely related. Now, many of you who have a statute that's necessary component to your research, this is a definite must-to thing that you need to do. Okay, here we go. Now, the first thing we're going to do, obviously, is read the statute and find out if there's any subsections of the statute that are really helpful to us. So do we need subsection B, maybe? Is that the one best for us? So once you figure that out and you've read your statute, the next thing you want to do is go to your notes of decisions, okay? Now, sometimes it's going to be called case notes, and other times it's called notes to decisions. Either way, you want those cases that further interpret this code section. So now I really want to take some time and go through my list here to see where they're going to talk about negligent infliction of emotional distress. Now I can actually jump around right to my terms by clicking search terms, and I can decide, okay, I want to jump right to where it says bystander, right? Or maybe I want to jump right to where it says negligent infliction of emotional distress. So I'm going to take this one out because that one's too attenuated. And let's just try to find out where it says negligent infliction of emotional distress, right? And so let's just jump to that. Okay, so now we're in the area of negligent infliction of emotional distress, and I want to take a look at those cases. So this is what the notes do. They give you more cases, like a secondary source, to read that are on point, and you know they cite your statute. Now, there's one more step we can do here, okay, guys? We want to also be able to shepherdize our statutes. Now, I know Shepherds sounds scary, but don't let it be. Shepherds is going to give you a list of everything that's ever cited your source. And in our case, it's anything that's ever cited the California negligence statute. So we're going to shepherdize our doc. That's going to give us everything that's ever cited this. Let's say there's a specific subsection that you need. So maybe you need subsection B, then that's when you come down and you click subsection reports. And we want to make sure that we look at the one that has our subsection in it, right? Okay, so in here, there are no subsections that really help us. But if it was B, then I might want to come down and then I'm going to get only the cases that cite this subsection. So now we're narrowing down to a much smaller body of case law, right? So you want to make sure you do that step. The next thing you want to do when you're here is just make sure that you're in the right jurisdiction, that we're not looking at cases from other circuits or places. We here in California, let's get rid of everything else. So we've narrowed now to our subsection, we've narrowed now to our jurisdiction, and now we still have 55 cases. Now we want to put in some terms, okay? So once again, we're looking at subsection B, all the cases from California that cite this code section, and we want to put in our terms. Now, what are our terms? Our terms are bystander or third party, and you also want to put in that tricky element that you're having trouble proving. So I have close relationship. We want all of this to be in the case, right? I can change this and make it a /P. And that means that my terms must be in the same paragraph as close relationship. Now, this statute wasn't on point, so I'm not going to run this, but you definitely want to do this step if you have a statute that's on point for your research. You want to find out where your terms are in cases that cite your statute. Okay. So we're going to go back to the beginning again. We're going to move on to the next step. So once we've looked in secondary sources and then we went to statutes, now we're ready to look in case law. Okay. So here we are, over 10,000 cases. So once we're in case law, we need to filter down because 10,000 is too many results. Okay. So let's go down and filter to our court. Now for us, we just need to focus in on California state cases. So I'm going to scroll past the federal. But if you have a federal issue, then you may need to come in by 9th and narrow more to the 9th Circuit cases that we're going to make this easy and just say California cases that talk about negligent infliction, emotional distress, and bystander. Now that you're here, we still have 1,000 cases. That's too many to look at. So here's a trick. I want you to come to your Ravel view. Ravel view is going to pull from the top 75 cases in your results set, and it's going to tell you what the most influential cases are to others in your site list. So what I mean is, I see that I've got a few big bubble cases here. That means all of these other cases are citing these cases for the issues in my search. So if I hover my mouse over them, you'll see where it says how to use. It now tells me that this is the Thingby Lechuza case, which we read about in the secondary source. So everybody's citing that case. And then I can see, okay, this is an Ochoa case. Wow, everybody's citing that one too. What else we got here? And we come on down and we take a look at all of the big bubble cases. We make sure we see them. And then this is just kind of telling me, these are the family tree of all the new cases that are citing my case. So I might want to check some of them out too, right? Or I might want to be more specific here because I still have a whole lot of cases. So I may say, you know what? It's important to me that this search has sibling or sister or brother in the same paragraph as close relationship. Now, if they call it closely related, you can do something like that. Okay, so be careful with your terms. Did our Ravel view change? Well, we have a lot less stuff here. So now we can come down and make sure that we find these cases. Thing v. Lechuza, Eldon, Ochoa. Okay, those look like cases I definitely want to take a look at, and probably this Moon case too. And if I want something really recent, I'm going to want to see what the more recent cases are, so I can prove to the courts that not only were you following the law of Thing v. Lechuza, but all the new cases today are still following that same law, right? Okay, let's go back to graphical. So now we've got 17 cases in our site list. That's a really good site list. But I also made a really specific search here. So I'm going to make it broader right now so we have more cases, and I can show you another trick. Okay, so we're back to our 1,000 cases. We've narrowed to our jurisdiction, and we're ready to enter in some terms again, right? We made a great search last time, but I'm going to help you out by giving you a new feature, because I know things don't always work so magically when you do it on your own for your own issue, right? Okay, so let's say we've got more generic terms. We're going to see them more often. We can use this at least 3. Now, 3 is a variable. You can make it any number you want. I could use 2 or 4, but be careful, because that means that you want to see your terms showing up at least that many times in your result set. So if you have terms that you're seeing all the time in your cases, at least 3 is going to be a good way to make sure there's a repetitive discussion. Know that you're going to see those terms multiple times. The court is talking about them. Typically for case law, which is what we're in, I will choose a number between 3 and 5. Okay, let's run that search. Now we have 45 cases. So it's at least is another way you can narrow down your result set. Let's take a look at Thing v. Lechuza. So we found a case, right? Once you're here, this is how you use a case to find more resources. Maybe you had this case to begin with. Your professors gave it to you. So we're going to come to Lexis and type in 48 Cal 3rd 644, and then we're going to have this case in front of us. There's a couple things you can do. The first thing is I'm going to obviously read the case, and I want to make sure which headnote is the most on point for my research. Which headnote sums it up really well? So we can use our tricks, and we can narrow down by our terms and jump right to those terms to find them where they're being discussed. But we didn't type in close relationship in our original search, so I'm going to add it in now. Okay, it's mentioned 34 times, so now we start reading. Okay, wow. So headnotes 10 and 11 are discussing my topic. Is there any more? No. Okay, so these are the 2 sections that I'm probably going to need to read around in my case a lot, right? Because they're talking about my subject. So I can click down and read where my terms are and find out that spectrum. What is the test using for determining in Thing v. Lechuza if the relationship was close or not? Are there specific words that the court uses to discuss close relationship? So now when we jump down and we're looking at the area that on point and then we're in the cases that we need to find the facts of this case and see how they relate to closely related. We need to find out who the closely related person is in Thing v. Lechuza and how she's related to the victim, right? And those facts are, we're either going to say our case is similar to these facts, and therefore the court should rule in our favor that our case is as well, the people are closely related, or they're going to say, no, we're not nothing like this. Obviously, in our situation, you're going to court, we'd like you to find this way, right? So that's why we need the facts from this case. How do we use this case to find more resources? Well, if this is our headlining case and we know we need it, right? All the other cases are citing Thing v. Lechuza. We saw that on the Ravel map. Now I want to go to Shepard's report and find out all the cases that cite my case. Okay, so we know Thing v. Lechuza is the big case for this issue, right? All those other cases were citing to it. We saw the map in Ravel View. So now I want to come up and find out all those cases that cite to Thing v. Lechuza. That's your Shepard's report talking to you. These are the cases that cite your case. So now we're in Shepard. It's as easy as this. You're already doing it, right? Okay. But we need from our jurisdiction. So once again, I click it, and we need to narrow by our terms again. I only want the cases that cite Thing v. Lechuza that talk about sister or brother or sibling. And I could be more specific and added and close relationship or close relationship in the same paragraph. Now I have 83 citing decisions to take a look at. That's still a lot. So now I might do something like at least 3 sister or brother. And so we're making sure the court is talking more about the sibling relationship and they're having a really good discussion about it. And that'll narrow me down even further. Finally, we've done everything. You have a good body of cases. You keep finding the same cases from the secondary source, from your notes of decisions, from the statute that you pulled, from the Shepherd's report you pulled to find out all the cases that cite your statute. And we looked at our Ravel view and we saw what the main cases are. We went to those main cases. We found through Shepherd's every case that cited those cases. We've done all of this. We're finding the same body of cases popping up. Then you know you're in the right neighborhood. You found all the cases you need, and now you just need to factually go through them and find the best ones to cite to in your memo. There's one final step, and that's to shepherdize to see if the cases you found are good law. So let's pull up a bad law case. Okay, so we're Americans. We know Plessy v. Ferguson is bad law. Off to the side, you're going to have your Shepherd's report, and that's talking to you right here. It's telling you, warning, warning, red stop sign, right? We know what to do. We're going to stop and figure out why. So we click it, and we find out that based on equal protection issue, the Brown v. Board of Education case has overruled our case, Plessy, okay? So immediately I'm going to want to go in and read this section. I'm also nervous about this questioned as well, okay? So when you see red stop signs, we need to click the Y and find out. If you see question, that's not good either. So we got to click the questions as well and be a little nervous. So when we click questioned, the next thing we want to do is, well, are they questioning it for my jurisdiction, right? Because I don't care if it's from another jurisdiction. So we come down and we see, okay, what courts? Well, we got one from California, and we need to find out, well, what did the California court say? Well, there is one California case out there that's questioning the validity of our case. So now, of course, I need to link out using this link, read and find out why it's questioning it. So when you see another case is questioning the validity of your case, you want to come in, click this, and find out why. Finally, on Lexis, we make it really easy on you through Shepherd's, and you can find out all the cases that cite your case. Here's the positive treatment. Why are these cases citing Plessy v. Ferguson as positive treatment? Well, there's one obvious reason. Maybe they came out before Brown v. Board of Education, right? There's another reason, and it has to do with prisoners, that their law isn't the same. And so these cases actually have to do with a whole different set of law in the prison system. So that's what's going on here. But please use your Shepherd's report right here to find out what's damaging. And all you have to do is follow your links. Okay, email me if you need me. I'm here for you.